I thought 1471 is when you ring it to find out who's rung you.
Oh, no, you're right.
And 141 is
right.
the blocker.
You're right. It's 141 is the block and 1471 is to find out who phoned you. So the other way around. Back to barracks. 141 and then dial the number.
Right.
141.
Is that it? Have we got through everything?
I think we have.
Right. There's just a message just come up here. It says my UPS batteries no longer need replacing.
BBC Midlands Radio.
Well, that's part of a track called Large Afternoon. And it's quite a nice one, actually. It lasts a good time, but we've got a lot to move on to tonight. So it signals that our next guest, is about to join us. A gentleman that was way back in the 60s doing things, way back in the 70s, in the 80s, the 90s, and is doing things now. We've talked to one or two people around this gentleman, and I must say thank you straight away to Wallace Sefton for sorting it out for us. I have on the line none other than Dave Greenslade. Hello, Dave.
Hello there.
How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Dave,
Who am I speaking to, Chris?
It's Chris. It's Chris here, and Mike will probably chip in with some pertinent questions. But Dave, my first kind of discographical knowledge of you goes back to when you were with Chris Farlow, but surely you started a bit before that. Is that right?
Well, I did. I started a bit before that with a little-known band in this country, but it was a kind of learning curve. A band called Westminster 5, and John Heisman was even playing in that band.
Right. Were you on then? That was on the Carnival label.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got one at home in my collection called Westminster Blues.
That's it. Yeah.
And you were on that.
Yeah.
Ah, right. So tell us a little bit then about, because I know nothing about the label. Tell us all about that band and the Carnival label.
Well, I don't know anything about Carnival label. As
right.
You know, labels come and go. Material just comes along and then disappears again, you know, and then you just find it re-released on somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I can't remember too much about the Westminster 5, except that it was a great apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
There was Clive Burrows on baritone, there was John Heisman on drums, there was Paul Williams, a great vocalist who subsequently went to Zoot Money's Big Roll.
Yes.
But well before that, when I was 14, I started playing with Tony Reeves and John Heisman as a piano, bass and drums trio, which goes back into the 18th century sometime.
Was that recording, Dave, or just playing?
No, we were just playing, you know, small gigs and so on, just starting out, really, but we never knew where it was going to lead, and certainly realised it was going to lead to Colosseum and Greenslade.
Yeah, so your first recordings then were actually Westminster 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe you had 2 records out as Westminster 5. So where did you go from there?
Well, I went abroad. I was playing in the Flamingo Club in Wardour Street once with the Westminster 5, and this guy came in and said he was a big star in North Africa. I thought, well, I think I know where North Africa is, but I've never heard of you. And I wanted to turn pro because I was doing a day job and doing all these gigs 3-4 nights a week, and it was killing me. So he said, well, the first gig is in Casablanca. So I thought, well, that's a good opportunity. I can give up my day job and see what happens. So I did 6 months with him in North Africa and Paris, and then I came back and phoned the people that controlled the Flamingo and said, does anybody want a keyboard player? And that's when John Gunnell said, bless him, Chris Farlow's looking for a keyboard player.
Right. Can I just ask, Dave, what was the name of the big star that you were with in Africa then?
Well, his name was Teddy Ray, but no one's ever heard of him outside of Casablanca. But it actually kind of gave me an opportunity to go and actually do the proper thing. I play music full-time.
So we're into the Chris Farlow era now then?
Yeah, I got back and I joined Chris Farlow and the Thunderbirds and played with wonderful musicians like Albert Lee. Albert Lee knocked me out every single night, and I played with that band for 3 years, and so did Chris. And now, as you know, Chris Farlow then joined Colosseum much later.
Yeah.
That was obviously directly because of my work with him.
did you go straight from Chris Farlow then to help form Colosseum?
Not straight to. I did 3 years with Chris.
Yeah.
And then Gino Washington called me and asked me to join the Rams Jam Band.
Right. Now, recordings with Chris then, you would have obviously been on Out of Time?
Out of Time was done with an orchestra,
Right.
unfortunately. I mean, even Albert Lee wasn't on that recording.
Oh, right.
And a little question. I'm sure you know this record, and lots of people do because it's still being played. There's some backing vocals on that record.
Mm.
And the two guys that did the backing vocals are Mick Jagger and Keith Richards
Yeah.
on Out of Time
Mm-hmm.
for Chris,
Right.
which, not many people know that.
Right. So what tracks were you on then with Chris Farlow?
Well, we did 14 Things to Think About, which was an album
Yeah.
on Immediate,
Mm-hmm.
and I was on all of those.
Right.
There was another one, Blues, something Blues, I can't remember. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know,
But if
I've
then...
done recordings since then, so you're testing my memory.
I am. So when you went to Colosseum, now, I might be wrong here, but am I not I've got the impression somewhere along the line that those, the first two albums they did, you joined them not at the start, but later. Can you confirm or correct me on that?
No, it's not true. After 18 months with Gino, it
Yeah.
was great fun, and I was making quite a lot of money, but I was quite bored with the music after a while. I mean, there's only so many times you can play Woolly Bully. Enjoy it, you know.
Right.
So John called me up, and we'd all gone separate paths. He'd gone to John Mayall and Graham Bond and various things. And he phoned me and said he's going to form a band. He'd had enough working for other people, and he's going to form a band. And would I like to play keyboards? He said, I've got no idea what we're going to play. I don't know what we're going to earn, but would you like to do it? And I immediately said yes. So I was in right at the beginning of Colosseum with Tony Reeves,
Right.
John Heisman, and Dick Hextall-Smith.
All right.
And we got James Litherland as our first guitar player.
Got it. So you were on Those Who Are About to Die.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously Valentine Suite.
Those About to Die.
Yeah.
Right.
Those Who Are About to Die.
Those Are About to Die, I kind of wrote that, and I wrote most of Valentine Suite.
Yeah.
Have you any memories from those days, Dave? I mean,
It was brilliant. It was absolutely wonderful. I mean, the 60s, I was born really at the right time because everything was changing. Everything was changing. We were coming out of the crooner era and coming into some serious rock stuff. And it was a kind of blend of all of our backgrounds. You know, I've been brought up a little bit with classical music and jazz with John and Tony.
yeah.
So the music that arrived with, dare I say, I think it was Colosseum was probably the first jazz rock band in Europe. They had to label us. Journalists always had to label
Of course.
Yeah.
as they labelled Greenslade later as being prog rock, whatever that.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we got on with it. We got on with our music, and luckily people enjoyed it very much. And so we went on.
If you had to pick a single memory, David, from that period of Colosseum, well, what would it be?
Well, we played. Well, it's very difficult that we did so many tours. We were on tour all the time. But I suppose we did the Bath Festival one year when Zeppelin were headlining.
Yes.
We were on sort of early evening, and I could not believe the number of people at this place. I could not see the end of the people. They were just up a hill, and it was astounding. I mean, there was something like 300,000 people at this place. And that was staggering. But really, the whole period was wonderful, working with people like Clem Clemson, and who I'm still working with, of course, with Colosseum's been reformed. But it was just, it was a whole new way of approaching music, in a way. And we didn't do it consciously, that's what came out, you know.
Before we move on to perhaps Colosseum as it will be the reforming of Colosseum, because I think our listeners will be extremely interested in that, and also the possibility of seeing performances.
Yeah, we've already played several tours in the last 5 years.
So we've got our pens handy here, David, so we can actually, if there's anything within the Midlands area at all, from South Manchester down to across the Midlands, if there's anything coming up, we'd like to have those dates off for you.
Yeah.
But we want to talk about Greenslade.
Yeah.
Yes, Greenslade.
Temple Song and an English Western and things like that.
English Western, yeah.
Yeah.
That was on the first album, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you signed to Warner's in, was it 72, 73?
Yes, I think that's about the right time.
Right.
Yeah, well, Coliseum folded because Clem had an offer he could not refuse.
Right.
And bless him, and he had to go. He was offered bucket loads of money to go and play with Humble Pie. And Coliseum were sort of floundering a bit after 4 albums, myself included, because it was an awful lot of pressure. You know, we're on the road 7 nights a week and writing albums as we're on the road. So Clem decided, to go with Humble Pie, and that was fine. So I decided to form a band with a keyboard-based band, that's when I formed Greenslade.
Who were the Gangsters?
Well, Gangsters is a TV series.
Yeah.
I was asked to do, that was my first TV series. Since then I've done about 26 different series, but I was asked to do the music for this wonderful, almost cartoony kind of thing, starring Maurice Coburn, who unfortunately died recently. He was a star of Howard's Way, and before that he was the star of Gangsters. And so there was like 2 series of 13 programs where I really got my baptism of fire of learning how to do music for television, and that was wonderful. So that piece of music, Gangsters, is the theme tune from that series.
And Rubber-Faced Lonely Eyes would be the other side of the single list, wouldn't it?
That's right, yeah. Well, that was another character in the series, which I wrote a piece about.
And before that, there was a track called Catalan.
Catalan.
Yeah.
Well, Catalan is a classic of Greenslade piece, really. We went to Barcelona and played a wonderful theatre there, and I decided to write a piece about all of that. In fact, we're still doing that on stage, in a slightly newer form.
Right.
And I love that. I love playing it on stage.
Dave, I must ask you about the Pentateuch with the book. The book itself, if I remember rightly, was very, very well written, but very, very well illustrated, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the book itself is great. How did all that idea come about? And the second question is, was it really a financial project?
Yeah, it was fine. EMI, bless them, actually took a flyer on this. The way it came about, briefly, I'll be very brief, but Patrick Woodruff, the artist and the guy who wrote the book, and did all the illustrations, did the illustrations for Time and Tide, our 4th Greenslade.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
That had a gatefold sleeve too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how we met. And so a couple of years later, he got in touch with me and said, I've got this book and all these paintings, and I think it should be illustrated musically. So instead of him illustrating our albums, he asked me to illustrate his albums musically. So that's how that came about. It took a year to write it, because it's a double album, as you know. And EMI, said, yep, go and do it.
I mean, to many people, it was the most lavish production up to that point, including the Beatles or Pink Floyd, the most lavish production of any double album set ever.
Yep.
A phenomenal set.
True. And in fact, it's now out on CD. It's out on BGO Records.
Yeah.
Andy's Records, They licensed it from EMI. And because of the modern technology, all of those wonderful paintings and so on have been reproduced really well on a CD set, so that you get the whole booklet. It's fantastic. I mean, we were very worried about shrinking it down to those 4-inch formats, but it actually works. And I remastered it, and it sounds great, and apparently it's selling okay.
Dave, if we move right up to date, because I'm now clock watching, coming up to the news, you've reformed Colosseum.
Yep.
And the members these days, who are the members now in Colosseum?
It's actually the definitive lineup that did the Colosseum live album in 70, whenever it was.
Right.
It's Dick Hextall-Smith.
Yep.
It's Mark Clark on bass.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Clemson on guitar.
Yep.
John Heisman, Chris Farlow singing, and myself on keyboards.
And you've also still got Greenslade going.
Well, Greenslade reformed after Colosseum. What happened
Yep.
was I went to Europe doing a big tour with Colosseum, reforming tour, as it were, and I had loads of people coming up with Greenslade albums. So when I got back, I decided to contact Tony Reeves, who was up for it.
Yep.
The other two couldn't because of commitment, but I found two great musicians in John Young and John Trotter, and we're off and running. We've just been to Mexico to do the Baja Prog Festival.
Mm-hmm.
Been invited to Seattle to do a festival there, and we've just done a little UK tour, and we'll be moving onwards and upwards.
Well, hopefully, Dave, that next time you're anywhere sort of north of Watford and south of Manchester, you'll get in touch with the programme, and we will be sure to mention, and you can expect us somewhere in the audience. And
Oh, I'd love to, yeah.
can we just say thank you for some phenomenal music over the years, and certainly some of the best album covers, and power to your elbow, and thank you very much for being our guest this evening.
Thank you very much. Cheers, man.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Greenslade there, and Wherever I Go. Thanks to Wal Sefton for helping us sort that out. And we've got a few more, what I call modern things coming up. I think it's right up at the end of May. We've got the Classic Rock Society coming in, and Greenslade actually did some recordings for them. In fact, that recording there, Wherever I Go, was recorded at Rotherham in UK. That's a live recording there, done by the Classic Rock Society. I've got no Record Fair news this weekend, but I can say one or two things coming up. I think one Mike may have been to, I haven't been to yet, but I'm going to try and check it out, is Buxton on April the 21st. And I think that's at the Pavilion, I think, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, that's right in the centre of Buxton. And Buxton's quite a nice place to spend the afternoon. It's got a lovely theatre there as well. So it's an interesting fair, that.
Yep. Well, I'm going to try and check it out. I've never been. I've got a Sunday off, so I'll see what I can do. And Telford the day before on the 20th at the Belmont Hall, Wellington. Mike, time for a track.
Yeah, and just to say, your quiz question, who are the Knack in 1965? Who do I refer to? Who are the Knack in 1965? Postcards to Mike Adams and Chris Savory. Usual spot, that's P.O. Box 96, Shrewsbury SY1 3WW. Next week we'll be looking at a 50s book, a little bit more detailed than this week. And fingers crossed we may have one or two more celebs that we're trying to line up for your delight. But here we have a track from a recently released album called If Loving You Is Wrong. 20 cheating heartbreakers on the Ace record label. And here's a track called She'll Never Be Your Wife from Irma Thomas.
Yeah, and we won't dedicate that to Nick and Claire who are getting married.
No.
And Trevor, have a good day tomorrow. See you all next week.
All the best.
Well, Irma Thomas takes out the record collectors tonight, but we'll be back same time, same place next week. Here's the news. See ya.
It's 9 o'clock. I'm Ian Wood. Officials say Westminster Hall will stay open as long as it takes to accommodate everyone who wishes to view the coffin of the Queen Mother. Her body was moved there from St James's Palace this morning and will continue to lie in state until Tuesday's funeral. About 2,500 people an hour have been filing past the coffin, with many waiting up to 6 hours. Most of them say it was worth the wait.
The atmosphere is very sombre, dignified, Everybody's respectful, everybody's bowing to the castle clock, and the guardsmen are just still as stone, just immaculate. They almost look like statues themselves.
You get in there and it's